Let's wave at everyone who are we streaming yet? Okay, good. So can you hear okay now? Okay, if my voice goes down because I don't know if we're on or not, just put up your hand, okay, because then I'll know that I have to get a little louder. Nez is going to do the chazanut, and that's very nice that she's going to be here because you wouldn't want me to do it. And we're going to begin tonight on page 100, or with Hine Matov, page 128, 128 of the Siddur of the prayer book.
Hine Matov
Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Umanayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. And I'm assuming most of you know one another, but if not, please say hello, say Shabbat Shalom, greet the person in front of you and back of you, to the side of you. Shabbat Shalom. For those of you I don't know, I'm Rabbi Chester. I'm taking Rabbi Nancy's place this week and then next week, and then she'll be back. I talked with her today, and she's doing much better. In fact, she told me that she's even giving bar and bat mitzvah lessons by Zoom at home at this point, so she's feeling much, much better. We're going to continue now on page 120, 120, with the kindling of the Shabbat candles. We call up Lori to lead us in the kindling of the Shabbat candles. Do we rise for this one here? Please rise, those who are able. Be seated. Shabbat Shalom. We continue, page 142, with Shalom Aleichem, 142.
Shalom
Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Sarchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim,
HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 137, let's read together. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calve and strips forests to bear. While in God's temple all day, glory, Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned, sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai. As we're going to sing L'cha Dodi right now, welcoming the Shabbat, we sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. This song, of course, was done by the mystics, written by the mystics as a song welcoming Shabbat. And you have to sort of close your eyes for a moment before we start to sing. And imagine yourself, you're in the city of Tzfat, and you're walking the street, and the sun is going down, and Shabbat is beginning, and all of a sudden, what you're asked to do is to close your eyes and to bring in the Shabbat bride for the beautiful time that we have on Shabbat of rest. So for just a moment, close your eyes and imagine you're standing there by the mountain in Tzfat, waiting for the Sabbath bride to come. We sing together, we sing L'cha Dodi, page 138. Of course, at the last verse, we stand, face the door, and welcome the Shabbat bride into our sanctuary.
L'cha Dodi
likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikava. L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat
nikava.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, Ushmo echad, Lishemu tiferet v'lithilah, L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat
nikava.
L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikava. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor habracha,
Mirosh
Mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh machshavat hilah, L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikava. L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikava. Kitori, Kitori, Kiborech, Umi Uri, 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 Shir Dabari, Kibod Adonai, Layach Nigla, L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikava. L'cha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat.
Nekava.
Page 144, the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkadal v'yitkadashemi rabba.
Amen.
Ve'almadi racher tevian li quantite.
V'chayechon v'yomechon u'chayedecho Beit Yisrael ba'agala ba'agala u'vizman kariv. Amen. Yesh me rabba mevarach le'olam olam me'omaya yitbarach.
Yitzbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitramam, v'yinaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei dekudisha.
Barichu.
Leila, min kol berkata v'shirata.
Tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'maru. Amen. Page 146, our call to worship, the Baruch.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, le'olam va'ed. We read together on page 147, the bottom reading. O God, you are as near as the very air we breathe, yet farther, you can be seated, the farthermost star. To reach you, we seek the light and warmth of your presence. Though we say you are near, we are lonely and alone. Oh, let our desire be so strong that it will tear the veil that keeps you from our sight. Let your light release our darkness and reveal the glory and joy of your presence. Feel free to be seated. Page 148, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhmah poteach she'arim, uvitfuna meshane etim umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim b'mismerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil vein yom uvein layla Adonai tzavaot shemo, el chayich v'tkayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Aravim. Ahavat Olam, page 150. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadata, Otanu limadata.
Alkein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochenu, uvkumeinu nasiach b'chukvecha, v'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech mameinu, uvahem negei yomam v'layla, negei yomam v'layla, ve'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu li'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 152, for those whose custom is to rise for the Shema, please feel free to do so. For those whose custom is remain seated, please feel free to do so.
Shema
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Avayeh. Please be seated. Let's join together in V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu ha'im ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'am v'shivtecha v'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech v'shofecha u'v'kumecha u'shartam leod al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha v'yisharecha L'man tizkaru asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kadoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Page 157, let us read together on the top. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There is no way to get from here to there, except by joining hands and marching together. We sing together our Song of Freedom, page 158.
Mi kamocha
Ba'elim Adonai, mihi kamocha, nedar ba'kodesh, no ratahilot, o sehefeleh, no ratahilot, o sehefeleh. V'ne'amar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, u'galo mi'ad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles and earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. Hashkivenu, page 160.
Hashkivenu
Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamideinu malkeinu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us faith throughout the night,
till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right. Amen.
Yismechu, we join together in the rejoicing over Shabbat, page 162, the bottom.
Yismechu
v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat. Alam Yisba'u V'yitanu mitu v'cha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat, Chemdati Yamim, Oto Karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei
Shabbat v'korei
Oneg Shabbat.
Yismechu
v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat.
v'korei Oneg Shabbat Zecher
L'maseh, L'maseh Bereshit Shabbat. Zecher L'maseh, L'maseh Bereshit.
Shabbat
Loudly, Malachutecha. Be happy to be here. Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. A little louder. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei Oneg Shabbat. A thought has blown the marketplace away. There is a song on the wind and joy in the trees. Shabbat arrives in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night. Eternity utters a day. We now rise for those who are able for the second part of our service, the Tefillah, page 164. silently the Amidah through page 175, the Ritzay. Page 175, Ritzay.
Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'amcha Yisrael, U'techiratam be'ahava tikabel, U'techiratzon tamid avodat Yisrael.
And now we continue reading silently with prayers of your own or prayers from the Siddur through page 178. When you have finished, feel free to be seated. Page 178, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav
Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam.
Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom.
Before we do the Misha Berach, I'd just like to comment on a couple of things. First, this week's Torah portion will only be for about 2 or 3 minutes, mainly because we have a guest speaker today. The Torah portion, Ki Tetzeh, has more commandments in it than any other Torah portion of the Torah, and they range from some that really are sort of cruel to some that are very majestic. So you really have two separate things going, and tomorrow our Torah study, and many of those commandments actually still apply today in the way we live our life, or especially traditional Judaism may live part of its life. So I'll talk about that at Torah study tomorrow. The other thing I want to look at, if you go back to page 168 for a moment, because I always like to try to say, why are we saying something? Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I talked about in the Reformed Judaism where they left off the point in the Kiddush about chosen from amongst all peoples, and we have it in the prayer book. Well, if you look on page 168, I'll ask you the question. On the second line, about the fifth line, and the end, why do they have a parenthesis? Anybody have any idea?
Because wasn't that the way that it said it more Orthodox?
That is correct. And what is, that's what it says in more Orthodox, and what does it say?
Well, that there's an actual physical resurrection of the bones.
Thank you, right. If you look at it, it says, in the English it'll say, you are forever mighty, God, you give life to all. But look at the parentheses in English. Revive the dead. Resurrection. Resurrection was not a Christian idea first, it was a Jewish idea first, okay? That when Messiah came, we would all be resurrected and then judged. Now, what's interesting here is in the previous Reformed prayer book, this occurred in only one service. In the other Reformed prayer book that I grew up with, it wasn't there at all. And the reason is that Reformed Judaism overall, Reformed Jews can believe it, but as a movement, does not believe in resurrection. And when they decided to put this in this prayer book, I know this congregation says, Machayeh HaMeitim all the time, and what you are saying is, praise our God who resurrects the dead, okay? Now, that's fine. What other Reformed congregations still don't say that. They say Machayeh HaKol, that gives life to all. It was interesting because one of the biggest arguments that took place in the writing of this prayer book was, do we put this in Machayeh HaMeitim, or do we not put it in Machayeh HaMeitim? And the way that the Reformed rabbis who were writing the prayer book got around this was, it doesn't mean resurrecting the dead. What it really means is that in each and every one of us, there's something that sort of died somewhere along the line. And as we get a little older, as we mature, or as we have more time, we resurrect that part in us that sort of died away. So I'll give you an example of my cousin in Israel, who was a teacher, but a wonderful artist. And when she finally decided to retire, she took up art once again. That was, quote, resurrected in her. Others have done other things. I myself, although I'm not a professional, when I first went to Israel to study in 67, I didn't have much money. I sold all my photography equipment. I love photography. When I retired 11 years ago, a little bit different. You didn't need all this stuff with chemicals and all that stuff, which I used to use in the bathroom without any ventilation. But you have digital and everything. But again, something comes up, and that's the way the rabbis explained what this means, so it doesn't go back to the traditional, or as you said, the Orthodox way, but something within each of us, one of us, that has sort of faded away a little bit. Maybe we can bring it back and bring it up again, and that's really what that prayer refers to. Okay, we're going to continue now on page 371 with the Misha Berach, and I'd like to ask if anyone, well, I can't move from here, okay. Oh, we're up. Okay, does anyone have any names he or she would like to mention for the Misha Berach prayer going through here? Yes?
Ariel Firestill.
Okay.
Virginia Kosh. Julie Evers. Miriam Dillard. Maureen Brown. Martin Allen.
For all of those whose names we mentioned, we asked for refuah, we asked for healing, as well as those who are suffering today as victims of war, those who hurt so very, very much. We also think of those in Israel who are hurting and suffering because of what has happened to so many, as well as those innocent ones in Gaza. We think of those who, if you look at the news, the floods in New Orleans and in Louisiana, and the natural disasters that are occurring, and for those who are suffering because of that, as well as those who suffer in their homes as alone and lonely, those who are victims of elderly, spousal, or child abuse. Those too we ask forgiveness for, those whose unfortunately children or others have died because of guns. So we now join together on page 371 in the Misha Berach. Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. And of course, we ask for healing too for our rabbi, for Rabbi Nancy, who is now recovering and soon will be back with all of you. Thank you. We have our list here too. Sandy Lewin, Meredith Rosenberg, Jerry Steinke, Bill Roselle, Mark Snyder, Mitch Phillips, Carla Gilmore, Mary Hanson, Dawn Cordano, Nir Peled, Bart Willis, Dan Lee, Robin Moore, Beryl Schwartz, Ron Burnham, Bruce Silverman, Maytal Mizrahi, Julie Hoffman, Emily Kelly, Mark Latat, Rachel Rodman, and Julie Henry. Let us continue with the second half of the Misha Berach. Misha Berach, Limotenu, Mekor HaBracha, Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing, with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And although we're here at times too, because of those who are ill and studying the Misha Berach, we wouldn't be fair to ourselves and others if we didn't think of some nice things that happened during the week, also on the Shabbat. So I ask anyone, as I did last week, have you seen anything that is beautiful outside that you'd like to comment on? Yes.
Well, I was biking yesterday on the trail, a deer with 4 points and antlers stood right on the trail as I went right by, and maybe 50 feet later appeared to be a coyote right in front of me. Like today.
Anyone else? Sure.
One of my college assignments for the day, believe it or not, was to go outside and feed squirrels.
There are a lot of them there to see. Anybody else see something that's really nice? Anybody have a birthday this month? Tell us your name. Yes, and when is your birthday?
September 27th,
And how young will you be?
21.
Good, that's very nice. I think you better look at that prayer we just talked about, okay? Wait, you can't sit down, you have to keep standing. And you have to keep standing, and you have to keep standing. Anyone else have an anniversary or anything? Anybody in the family have a birthday? Yeah, stand up. Who are you and what is it?
My name's Frank and my mother did that birthday.
Ah, very good, okay. All right, anybody who's happy to be here tonight on Shabbat, stand up. You better. And we say together the Shafianu, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shafianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu lasma. We thank you, our God, for bringing us all to this blessed moment. Amen. Please be seated. I'd like to call up Lori now for a special prayer, not a Misha Berach, and not happiness in the sense of one thing, but you want to just go here where the kid is that the traveler's prayer. She's leaving in a couple of days for New York, and then after that for a couple of weeks in Israel to see her daughter. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Adonai Avotenu. May it be your will, O God, our God and the God of all ancestors, that you should lead in peace, and may you direct our steps in peace, O God, and guide us in peace, and support us in peace, and cause Lori to reach her destination in life, in joy, and in peace. Save her from every enemy and ambush, from robbers and wild beasts on the trip, and from all kinds of punishment that rage and come to the world. May you confer blessings upon her, the work of our hands, and grant her grace, kindness, and mercy in your eyes and in the eyes of all who see us, and bestow upon her abundant kindness, and hearken to the voice of our prayer, for you hear the prayers of all. Blessed are you, God, who hearkens to prayer. And we say, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha, may God's graciousness be upon you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lach shalom. May God grant you that most holy gift, that of shalom, meaning completeness. Completeness for you, completeness for your daughter, completeness for the state of Israel. And may all of us say, Amen. And we have to give you two Hebrew words now. You ready? Here they are. We'll go one at a time. Nasiah.
Nasiah.
A little louder. Nasiah.
Nasiah.
Tova.
Tova.
That means a good journey.
Thank you. Toda.
Robin.
Well, I'm pleased to be here today to introduce our social action speaker for the month, Cheryl Davis. She's here representing Moms Demand Action, which is a grassroots movement of Americans fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. The group works to pass stronger gun laws and to close the loopholes that jeopardize the safety of families. They also work in our local communities and with business leaders to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. The group was founded by Shannon Watts, a mother of 5. The day after the Sandy Hook tragedy, Shannon started a Facebook group with the message that all Americans can and should do more to reduce gun violence. The online conversation turned into a movement of moms, dads, students, families, concerned citizens, and survivors working together with partners in the gun violence prevention movement to end this uniquely American crisis. Moms Demand Action has established a volunteer chapter in every state of the country and Washington, D.C., and is part of Every Town for Gun Safety, the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country with nearly 10 million supporters. Today, we are grateful to have Cheryl Davis, who joined Moms Demand Action at its inception. She became an active volunteer in the group in 2019 and has served as its Folsom Foothills local group elections lead and legislative lead. Cheryl will be sharing with us thoughts on how we can each take action to reduce gun violence in our community and schools. Let's give her a big round of applause for joining us today.
Thank you, Robin. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here this evening. I just wanted to go over who we are as Moms Demand Action, what we do, and then how we together can end gun violence. Every day in the United States, 120 individuals are killed by gun violence, and more than 230 are shot and injured. 60% of American adults and those that they care for have experienced gun violence. That is almost 2/3 of our population. While mass shootings get the majority of the media attention, they represent 1% of overall deaths by gun violence. In fact, it's suicides that account for the highest percentage of gun deaths, a statistic we don't really hear often about. As a gun violence prevention organization, it is our goal to end gun violence no matter what form it takes. So unfortunately, as you probably know, gun violence is uniquely an American problem. The United States far surpasses high-income countries in the number of gun homicides, and our rate is 25 times that of other high-income countries. Why is this? So when there have been mass shootings, you often hear the pundits say, well, it's the kids playing video games, or it's social media, or it's a mental health issue, or it's a parent issue. The bottom line, though, is that in other high-income countries, they play video games. They're on social media. They have an equal percentage of mental health issues among their populations, and they have parents who don't always make the best decisions, right? So what makes us different? It's the access to guns. And access to a gun increases your risk of death by homicide twofold. Firearms right now are the leading cause of death among our children and teens, surpassing cancer, surpassing car accidents. And gun homicides are most prevalent in our racially segregated communities with high rates of poverty. So who we are, Robin did a wonderful introduction of us, thank you, so I can probably skip a bunch of this. Moms Demand Action is a grassroots movement of individuals fighting to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people and to create a culture of responsible gun ownership. You will notice that I didn't say anywhere that we want to take everyone's guns. That's because that's not who we are. We are about keeping guns out of the wrong hands. We are about understanding that with important rights like that come tremendous responsibility. We are not anti-gun, we are anti-gun violence. And while we call ourselves Moms Demand Action, we like to say mothers and others are welcome. I actually want a t-shirt that says Grandma Demands Action. All we ask when you join us is that you're interested in and committed to ending gun violence. And as I said earlier, we're not anti-gun, we're anti-gun violence. We are nonpartisan. We do not align with a particular party. We do align, though, with lawmakers who will support common sense gun legislation and gun laws. And we're very proud at this point that we are the strongest counterpoint that exists to the gun lobby. So together, Moms Demand Action, and we have a Students Demand Action partner. We have actually a organization of Students Demand Action at UC Davis and at Sac State and in several high schools around the Sacramento County area. We work with them and with the Everytown Survivor Network, those who have experienced gun violence, they themselves or they've lost a loved one. And we have used evidence-based approaches and have 5 policy areas that we pursue in our work. 1, disarming domestic abusers. 2, closing the background check loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our children and our community. 3, responsible gun ownership and laws that will keep our kids and communities safe. 4, combating daily gun violence by partnering with community-based organizations and law enforcement and by supporting research on gun violence. Locally for us in the Folsom Foothills area, and we cover a big area, it's Folsom all the way up to Nevada County and then out here through Fair Oaks and into Carmichael. We work with a program in Sacramento called Movement for Life. And they work with young people 14 to 18 to try to interrupt if they're already in making those decisions that get them into a gun violence situation or preventing it through a lot of good life skills and interventions that they have. And number 5 of our evidence-based policy priorities is holding the gun industry accountable. So what do? We actually work in 3 categories. The first one is advocacy, and that's how I met Susan Solars. She is very active in our advocacy. Every year we go down to the state capitol in March 500 to 800 of us from across California. We've chosen our legislative priorities. We rally together and we, as groups, meet with every legislator, Senate and Assembly, to lay out what our priorities are for the year and what we would like to see in gun safety. Proud to say we've been very, very successful. A lot more successful in California than in other states. California right now is ranked #1 in gun safety laws. And we have, when they rate who has the most gun violence, California is in the bottom 5 of the 50 states. So our advocacy is through, as I mentioned, legislation. We fight for common sense gun laws or against bad laws when we see them come across. The second part of our advocacy is elections. We have a program called Gun Sense Candidate Distinction. So when someone's running for office, we have a questionnaire for them to complete. And if they are aligned with our desires for gun safety, gun sense legislation, agreeing to support safer communities, they earn that distinction, which then means our volunteers can volunteer with their campaigns. We can canvass, we can phone bank, we can write postcards. Right before I came here, we had a postcard party of about 20 people writing postcards for a gun sense school board candidate. The second area that we work on is school safety and city gun violence campaigns. We collaborate with school districts to share information with families about gun safety. And we partner with organizations that do intervention and prevention work in the communities, as I mentioned, Movement for Life here in Sacramento. Our third area is education campaigns. We work to educate people about responsible gun ownership. You see almost every week an unintentional shooting, a death, because a young person found an unsecure gun in the car, in the closet of their parents' home, somewhere in the home, thinking it's a toy, and end up hurting themselves or others. So we talk about safe storage, specifically safe gun storage, and we have what's called a gun violence restraining order. And that was legislation we brought forward several years ago. It's also known as the red flag law. You may hear it as that if someone is a danger to themselves or others, the court may temporarily remove their firearms from them, have them seek the help that they need, and then they're reviewed periodically to see if they can get their firearm back. We're very proud of that. It has worked, I know, in Folsom. Just a couple months ago, we had a gentleman that appeared to be stalking our middle school. The police were just kind of checking him out. They walked into his home and he had 20 firearms. And under the gun violence restraining order, they were able to remove those from him temporarily. So our education program we're most proud of is called Be Smart. And it is about safe storage. There's almost 5 million children in our country that live in a home that has a loaded and unsecure firearm. So the SMART is an acronym for S, secure all guns in your home and your vehicle. M, model responsible behavior. A, ask for the presence of guns in other homes. And that's difficult. When I take my grandchildren to their friend's home, it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, do you have firearms in your home? Are they secure? So that's always a challenge, but that is one that we really try to promote. The R, SMART, is to recognize the role of a gun in a suicide. And again, if you secure your weapons, understand that then you are preventing that from happening. And then the T is to tell your peers. Share the message. The intention through this discussion is that hopefully behavior will change across the board and that weapons will be secured and less accidents, unintentional shootings, and suicides will happen. So how can we end gun violence together? I think we're making progress. It certainly isn't fast enough for what we've experienced. Those of you who have children or grandchildren in school may know that every school district in our area was put on alert today. That there were threats made against Folsom Cordova, San Juan Unified, El Dorado, and in Placer County schools. I don't know those school districts that well, Roseville, Rockland. And on Instagram, there were threats to those schools. And one of the schools named was the one my grandson attends, a middle school in San Juan School District. The school's secured, they didn't lock down because law enforcement was able to track and see that it was actually not something that someone would was going to follow through on because it was so blanket. It seemed more like it was just trying to scare folks. We were only 2 weeks into the school year, and there was a mass shooting at that school in Georgia 2 weeks ago. Since then, there are 7 states that have had to close their schools because of continual threats to the schools. So what I ask is that you join us in this effort. We need more and more, and it's very good to have folks who will help us with our legislative agenda. So I gave Robin these. This is, if you're interested and you're ready to do something, you can text us and you'll become a volunteer with Moms Demand Action, mothers and others. And there's QR codes where you can learn more about what we do and what we're about. And then the second thing is elect gun sense candidates. So we have a program, as I would mention, the gun sense candidate distinction. You can go online, put your address in, and you will see which of your candidates have earned that distinction. So locally, of course, for president, we have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. For our Senate, it's Adam Schiff. But locally, Congressional District 3, Jessica Morse. The Assembly, Maggie Krell for around here. Neva Parker for up in Placer County. Portia Middleton for parts of Sacramento County. Your Sacramento City Mayor, both candidates are gun sense candidates. Dr. Flokhofer and Kevin McCarty. And then we have some Folsom City Council members also who are gun sense candidates. So look, when you are making your decisions about who you're gonna vote for this November, hopefully gun safety, keeping our communities safe, our children alive is a priority when you're looking at candidates. And then lastly, if you'll take action for us, we've been so successful in California with our legislation. And last year, we passed a Senate bill with Senator Portantino. You know him? Yeah? I don't know if you recall, the Supreme Court undid a New York law saying that folks had a constitutional right to carry a concealed weapon everywhere, but allowed states to define it. In California, we worked with our legislature and we passed a Senate bill that did restrict sensitive areas. You cannot carry a concealed weapon in here, or in schools, or libraries, or airports, or public places. And if a business chooses to allow folks to carry a concealed weapon, they need to put a sign out that says that is allowed, so you know as a consumer whether you want to patronize that business or not. And that someone who gets a concealed carry permit has to go through training about safely using and storing that firearm. So that was very successful for us. This year we have a piece of legislation that we would like your support on. There's information here where you can call the governor's office. You can leave a message. You have to call during the business hours. They shut the voicemail off at night. I'm sure they've gotten plenty of calls they didn't want. But it's Assembly Bill 2917 by Assembly Member Zabor. And we asked to expand the gun violence restraining order I mentioned to you. Right now it's for folks who are a harm to themselves or others, or domestic violence abusers. What we've asked to be expanded to is if there's a recent threat of violence or act of violence towards any group or location, because what we're finding is, as you can see in the news, schools are being threatened more, places of worship are being threatened more. You cannot even go to the movies anymore without some risk. If someone recklessly displays their firearm, I know there were protests in Sacramento and there were some folks who came up from the Stockton area and had firearms and were waving around, and law enforcement couldn't do anything. This would allow them to confiscate the gun and go to court and see if the person gets it back. If there's evidence of stalking, evidence of cruelty to animals, and then evidence of a respondent's threats of violence to advance a political objective. So that is how we're trying to increase it. When we worked with law enforcement to get them the tools they need so they can intervene. Because otherwise, without these things, they get to intervene after the incident, not before the incident. So that is out there too. There's some copies if you would be interested. It's very easy just to call during the day. So we think we have a long way to go, obviously. What we hope to do is continue to build a community that is not anti-gun. We're not talking about taking away folks' guns so that we don't scare folks, but that we have reasonable gun ownership and we have safe communities where you don't have to worry about your kids going to school. You don't have to worry about coming to worship. You don't have to worry about going to the grocery store, the movies, the bowling alley, and I could go on and on and on, unfortunately. So thank you for your time. I don't know if you want me to take questions or.
We'll take a couple questions.
Yes. Yes, does Moms Demand Action lobby at the federal level? We do. Actually, we are the volunteer arm at Everytown. I don't know if you've heard of Everytown. That was a program started by former Mayor Michael Bloomberg. He grassroots financed it. So they tend to be the ones who help us write the legislation, file the lawsuits and things like that. They tend to do the federal with lobbyists. But once a year we go to Washington, as we do here at the state capitol, and we bring in folks from around the country and we meet with the legislators and let them know what we think our priorities are. As you know, it's been really tough to get that kind of legislation out of our Congress right now. But we're hoping for next year. We're working very hard on the campaign for Jessica Morris for Congress, because if we can flip that seat to a gun sense candidate, maybe we'll get a majority in the House where we can pass some more reasonable gun sense legislation, because 90% of Americans, even NRA members, believe in background checks to keep firearms out of the hands of folks who shouldn't have them. They believe in the red flag laws or the gun violence restraining orders, and those are the things we need to get passed. Yes.
One more question. Go ahead.
Which states, I'm just curious, since you said California has some of the most rigorous laws,
Mm-hmm.
and which is a good thing, but which states are lagging behind? I'm just curious.
Anybody want to guess? You can probably guess.
Alabama, like,
Yes. Alabama, Mississippi, who? Wyoming, Idaho. There are about 8 states that have the worst. We have some that are making some progress. We're in the top, then there's this group that's like getting there, and then there's one that's like everybody's pulling them along, and then the bottom 8 to 10 that are just making no progress, actually making it worse. Like the shooting in Tennessee, was it? That was, the gentleman went in, bought an AK-47, 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and just stood on the freeway and shot cars the other day. That is a state that said no background checks, no ID, buy what you want. And that state is, their schools have been on lockdown. Their highways have been on lockdown. I don't know if you saw the picture of the semi-trucks that were surrounding a school bus so it could go down the freeway and not risk being shot. I know, in our country. So I'll be around if you have any other questions, but please take action for us and find out about us and join us in our effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm here to give the announcements for the week. I'm Robin Taylor Swat. Thank you to Rabbi Chester and Nez Huckleby for leading us through tonight's service. And a very special thank you to our guest speaker for joining us today. A big shout out to tonight's security coverage for keeping us all safe. And thank you so much to the Social Action Committee for sponsoring tonight's ONEG. Torah study will be on Zoom tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and you can find the link by visiting the CBS website. Next week, join us back here on Friday, September 20th for Shabbat services at 7 p.m. led by Rabbi Chester. This Sunday is a big day. Um, Woohoo, right? It's our annual CBS Food Fair, so I hope to see everyone there. The food fair still has space in the workshops. So if you're interested in learning about spices, or I know we have 2 different workshops going on by different cookbook authors, we still have space in those workshops. And there is a limited selection of items available for walk-in purchases. On Sunday, September 22nd, join Jeff Swat, my other half, for a lesson on becoming a Hagba, or the lifter of the Torah. He really would love to share that with many people. And this sacred ritual of lifting the Torah for the community, it's a mitzvah, and no one more fitting than our own Jeff Swat to share these skills. This workshop begins at 9:15 a.m. immediately after dropping off the kids for Neshama's first day of class. By the way, registration for Neshama can now be found on our website. You may find the 2024-2025 Terama forms in the foyer. If you've not done so, please grab one on your way out and consider your pledge for this coming fiscal year, and return the form to our wonderful administrator, Jenny Jeffrey. Also in the foyer, however you want to pronounce it, new membership packets can be found. And if anyone's new here, please consider those who are interested in learning more about becoming a CBS member. We are happy to share with you. You may find a flyer in the foyer for ordering a memorial book plate, a way to honor your loved ones during Yom Kippur. Also in the foyer, you can find flyers for other upcoming events, including a wonderful women's retreat scheduled for September. I see a lot of people involved in that. And the deadline to register, though, is this Tuesday. And also there's a flyer for our 24-25 concert series. We've also placed a few flyers from Cheryl on the table in the back in case you're interested in joining that movement. So thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Yes, Holly?
For the luncheon that we have after Rosh Hashanah service in the morning, we have a luncheon, and I would appreciate it if anybody is interested in helping, and if anybody is interested in making a kugel for them.
You can count me in for that, Holly. All right.
One other thing, announcement, which is we're in the month of Elul now, which means it's the month before the High Holy Days. It's time for each of us, we may be baking, we may be doing other things, but also to sort of take stock of ourselves and maybe try to find 1 or 2 things that we're going to work on in the coming year, where we can take the words that we say, Al Chechatanu, for the, quote, sin, although it's a bad word, that we have done during the past year. And we know that that word chet simply is an archery term meaning to miss the mark. So we go like this, trying to hit the bullseye in a sense in the coming year for something we've done wrong, only to realize that if we may hit the bullseyes in that, we're not going to hit it in everything. We're human beings, and we always can have something to forgive for, whether it's other people or for ourselves, within ourselves. So in this month, perhaps just again, take a few minutes during the day or during the week to say, this is what I would like to do to make it a better world for others, and of course a better world for myself. We now continue on page 586. For those who are able to rise, please do so for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabbat l'adon hakol, v'tefilu al yotzer breshit, shelo asanu v'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'go aleinu kechol ha'olam, v'anachnu korim
please be seated. Page 596. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust in the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear. But if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. And in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to console and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silence in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live, as in their higher moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now, they live in our hearts, they are an abiding lesson. I'll be calling some names. If you have your side tonight, please stand, and then when we join, if you wish, and be joined by everyone on the end. So I ask if anyone is in the midst of Shiva, 7 days of mourning, that would like to mention a loved one's name. Is there anyone who's in the midst of Shloshim who would like to mention a loved one's name? And I have here, I know I have it here. Did you see it, where it went? Which is the list, what we'll just say then, of those who, of course, of the hostages who were killed. We think of those 6 at this time. Also, anyone within a year of mourning that you would like to mention anybody's name? And we mentioned the following yortzites on this Shabbat: Ray Achenbaum, Dr. Milton Babbitts, Milton Baum, Jacob Berlinski, grandfather of Susan Charles, Selma Bloom, mother of Karen Brandt, Peggy Brashen, grandmother of Mark Hohenfeld, Dr. Leanne Foreman, father of Richard Foreman, Abe Gershenson, Charlotte Goldman, Sylvia Hirsch, Raymond Hess, Isidore Hochstead, Julia Kahan, Rebecca Lander, Ann H. Mendelson, C. Francis Michel, Joe Marav, Julius L. Paradise, Frida Rappaport, Gabriel Schwartz, Natalie Seidman, Stuart Sokol, friend of Razi Zarki, Dr. Annette Dushkin-Zubkov, and Albert Wasco. Is anyone else observing Yorkshire whose loved one's name was inadvertently left off the list? And now we all join as a congregation in support, as we mentioned the Yorkshire list for tonight. Ellen Sandler, Ruth Lander, Wadi El-Fayoum, Sunny Eisen, Allison Green Braverman, Eleanor Love, Rochelle Joy Pollock, Evelyn Guryev, William Bourne, Richard Bruce Lieberman, Louise Bourne, Carolyn Wismiller, Michael Saperstein, Dr. Benjamin Harouni, David Harris, Marjorie Bloom, Ron Bachman, Norm Jacobs, Laurie Serkin, Penny Clark, Sandra Hazlitt, Edward Edelstein, Karen Oakley, Joy Wheel, Anthony Mixak, Ann Eisenberg, S. George Ezekiel, David German, Marvin Martin, Cantor George Wald, Lisa Schneerson, Millie Birch, and Judith Forio as we join together on Kaddish, page 598. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Bialma, Divrach, Yirutei, Vyamlich Machutei, B'chai Chon, V'yomei Chon, V'chai Edechal, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'izman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah, M'varach, Le'olam, Olamei Almaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudashah, Barichu, Le'ela, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiron be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi Shalom Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh Shalom b'mromav, huya aseh Shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to Israel, to all people, to which we say,
Amen.
amen. Page 657, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. $657.
You may be seated. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
The list snuck under here, and I just found it, so I would like to mention those names tonight because we are still in the midst of Shloshim. Carmel Gat, Eden Yerushalayim, Hirsch Goldberg Polin, Alexander Lavanov, Almog Sarusi, and Ori Daninu. May they indeed rest in peace, and may their parents and families find some strength in the days and months ahead. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, we ask that you guard our going out and our coming in from this time forth and forever, and we say together,
Amen.
Amen. And I'd like to thank this young lady here for doing, you're gonna on next week too, right? For doing two things. One is, of course, the beautiful Chazanut, and the other is pushing a piece of paper over toward me in case I forgot something. So thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.